Hi, I'm Cindy Cloward with Riley Blake Designs, and today is the day. Today we're starting to work on our Jane Austen Block of the Month quilt. There's the beautiful quilt behind me. We've previously released a set to sew video of all the supplies that you need to make this extraordinary quilt, and today we're going to get started. We're going to get started on the Chawton Block. It's that center block inside of the quilt. And this is what you need to get started. You need to get the pattern. It's a free download on the Riley Blake Designs website. You need the Sew Simple Shapes designed by Lori Holt. And then you need this sew-in interfacing. You can see it comes in this convenient sheets. And this is what we use for this method of applique. So that's the sew-in interfacing. Let's refer back to the pattern. So you've downloaded the pattern, and it's a pretty hefty pattern. We recommend that you go through the pattern, just review it all, get a lay of the land so you understand how we're gonna assemble this quilt. So let's go through the first few pages. This gives you the schedule of the sew-along. Last month we did the set to sew video, and today is the Chawton Block. And then hop back next month where we'll be working on the Hampshire block. So many of the blocks are repeated 3 or 4 times, but the Chawton Block is only once. Now the next page is, I'm going to put on my glasses, is the cutting instruction. It shows a little thumbnail picture of the fabrics that we're going to be using. So we go back to the original Jane Austen at Home collection, but we're also using fabrics from Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, and Emma, bringing it all together on this special anniversary quilt. And look below, and it has reference to the size of squares that you're going to cut out for the applique blocks. So you can go through each of the squares and cut them out, prepping them ready to go for those blocks. So that gives you detailed cutting instructions for all the fabrics. And then we're going to go to the cutting guide for the sew-in interfacing. So this is the cutting guide for this sew-in interfacing. And it gives you the shapes. It refers to the shapes, the templates that you're going to use from your templates here. The below reference is the shape you're going to need to cut out for the applique, for the sew-in interfacing. If that's confusing, I'm going to take you through it next, okay? And the next thing, there is reference to the sewing techniques, everything from this sew-in, the applique method that we're using, which is using this sew-in interfacing, as well as piecing instructions. And piecing is going to be later after we do all the applique. But we have, you know, the flying geese 4 at a time method, as well as the square and the square triangle, and we'll take you through those piecing techniques later. So let's get to the block we are working on today. It's called the Chawton Block. It's the center of the quilt. And what's so special about Chawton? Chawton is a place where Jane Austen lived with her mother and sister Cassandra the last years of her life. It is where she revised and wrote many of her novels, and it's also the place Jane Austen was a quilter where she quilted on the coverlet quilt, which resides in the museum today. Again, it's located in Chawton, England, and it's now the Jane Austen House, which is a house that you can visit and see where Jane Austen lived and wrote her novels, as well as you can see the coverlet quilt. So it's a special place. I hope you get to visit one day. We are the official licensee of the Jane Austen House, and that's why we get to make all these beautiful reproduction fabrics from the original coverlet quilt. So look at this beautiful block. There's a lot going on in this block. We are going to get started on this Chawton Block now. So I'll move this out of the way. We've got our pattern. And a quick look at the pattern. We're going to pull all these fabrics that we previously cut under fabric requirements as well as interfacing requirements. You're going to pull all that that's been previously cut. Other things that are recommended for this, we do have the 18.5 by 18.5 inch ruler. That's at the very end after you've appliqued your block. You've given a light press, then you're going to trim it up. But you're going to need this bias tape maker, and we want the 1/4 inch bias tape maker. So it takes you through the block assembly. It shows you the reference to the So Simple shape. It references the layout, and it kind of takes you also through the bias tape of where you're going to use the curved bias piece, and I'm going to take you through how to create that, and then there's the finished layout. Now, the bottom piece, the base of it is a 20 by 20 solid piece of fabric, and this is what it looks like. It's very large, right? But we recommend that you fold it and press it in that fold. So you're going to fold it over like that, fold it again, and then you're going to do one more fold like that. And you're going to give it a good press. Go ahead and steam it because you want those creases to run deep. So we're going to lay that out, and those are going to be your reference points when you're going to lay out your pieces on this. So we can put that to the side. I'm going to put this pattern over here. We'll put that to the side. Okay, and here's my other prepped pieces. I've already gone ahead and sewn many of those, so you don't have to watch me sew these on camera. But you can see how helpful it is to have this design board to lay out all your pieces. You've got your So Simple shapes, like this. You've got your fabric. These are finished. I wanted to show a reference to them. But this is what you're going to have prepped. Okay, so I'm going to take you through how we're going to organize this. Okay, I'm going to put this to the side. And you'll reference your pattern, but we only need one of these, this V28, we only need one of those. And you're going to trace the So Simple shape on the interfacing. Now there's no right or wrong side, and you're going to want to use a mechanical pencil. We don't recommend using a friction pen that erases when you press this, because you're going to press this. So you're going to trace around your shape. And you can trace them all at once and then just sew them all at once, or you can work on one at a time. And then you're going to lay the interfacing on top of your fabrics. I'm going to put that back over here. And then you're going to take it to your machine and sew. Now, if it feels shifty at all, you can always throw a pin in the center. And you're going to make sure you're sewing right sides together. Now, again, I said there's no right side of this, but you're going to want the traced side up so you can see your traced lines, but make sure the fabric that you're sewing on is right side up. And you're going to take it to the machine, and we're going to sew around your entire, you don't leave an opening, all your marked lines. Now, we recommend a high quality cotton thread, and Riley Blake has some new thread. It's a 60 weight. The quilt behind me, I used a 50 weight. It worked out beautifully, but on this new quilt that I'm working on, where I'm using our Confetti Cotton's new thread. It's called a Fina, and we're working with Wonderfill. It's a high quality Egyptian cotton, and they recommend, because it's a finer thread, that your stitch length is 1.8. They also recommend using a top stitch needle, but I've used a regular quilting needle. That's worked fine as well. Now, when you're stitching around this entire area, you're not going to back stitch. When you get to the end of your stitch, you're just going to go over your stitch a little bit longer, kind of locking it in, but I don't do a back stitch. So let's get started, and you're just going to ease around those curves. I usually don't start on a curve, I start on a side. And I work very slowly going around those curves. If you have to stop and adjust. So I'm back to the beginning, so I'm just stitching across the stitches that I started with. And I have this applique foot, so it's really easy for me to reference that. Just go a few more. And then I'm gonna cut my stitches, pull it out, and that's finished. It's really important as you're going along to spread it out so you don't have any creases and it's nice and flat. And that's what we want to see. Okay. You're going to repeat that for this large shape there. This is the one we're going to work on right now. Small shape. Again, you've got your interfacing, and you just repeat that. Trace, right sides together, and sew around for all those shapes. If you've done Lori Holt sew-alongs, this is going to seem very familiar. Okay, and this is a really interesting shape. I'm going to take you through that one. You've got a lot of circles, so make sure you're drawing accurately and sewing as best you can. This is a tight circle, but we'll talk about circles later. We've got this shape. I think I'm going to sew this one too. So we'll sew this one because we're going to talk about this is very similar to this shape, and you can see. So I'm going to trace a couple more. I'm going to trace this one. Oops. There we go. Put that to the side. Again, you're just going to, maybe part of the day, you're just going to trace all your shapes, and then you're going to sew them all at once. However you would like to organize sewing these together, it's up to you. Okay, there we go. Make sure that's right sides together. Put the pin in it. And this one right here. I'm going to overlap my stitches. And we did a lot of fussy cutting on this, so it's kind of fun. Some fabrics are just, they don't really have, they're scattered all over, but then we have some designs that are fun to fussy cut. Okay, you'll notice that I am pivoting back and forth on these angles. Okay, so I'm getting to where I started my stitches. I'm just gonna go over them a little bit and then clip my threads, bring it back here, looking good. I think I'm gonna do one more shape on camera for you. I'm gonna do this V4, this little center of our flowers. Let me trace that. It's a tight little circle. We do smaller circles later. We're gonna start you out easy. Again, this interfacing is so nice because it's see-through, so you can look where you want to place it. If you want to fussy cut it, you do have a little wiggle room if you want to move it a certain area. Just a little wiggle room. Okay. So again, you're gonna, the smaller the circle, the slower you're gonna go. Just take it nice and easy. Okay. Now it's time to trim down. And we'll start with this one. Now the curves, you don't need to, the curves going out, you don't need to clip, but any kind of cleavage, you're gonna want to clip. The curves going in. Now you don't need to clip, I'm just gonna clip, see that cleavage right there? You're gonna almost go to the threads, but do not go through the threads. Actually, I'm gonna get a different pair of scissors for that. I'm gonna get these little Stork scissors. And I'll just leave those here. So I'm gonna use the bigger scissors to cut the big size. And I'm cutting about 1/4 inch away from the seam. Slightly under, that's okay. You don't want too big of a extra fabric from your seam. So I'm gonna clip there. Grab these storks and just clip down to the cleavage right there. Again, being very careful not to clip through your threads. Kind of clip on both sides just to ease that in. And then on both ends, you're gonna clip off the ends. I think I already did that. So that's ready to go. The circle, you can just cut around your circle and you don't have to clip in at all. Again, 1/4 inch. Sometimes I go slightly under, whatever works for you. But that's what the pattern guide tells you to do. There we go. Now, you're going to have to do more trimming on the, I'm going to trim this all first, and then I'll talk about the cleavage on this one. You do not have to clip on the outside of the curve, but on the inside, clip there, and then just every few. I don't know, that's like not even a centimeter. Just clip on the inside of that curve. So that's good to go. Okay. I'm going to trim around this. Okay. Again, this is I cut more often than needed probably, but you want that curve to be able to bend, and if you don't clip that, it's not going to bend very well. So clip, clip, clip. Okay, I'm almost done. All right, we're finished with that. I'm going to clean up my workspace. So simple shape over there. We don't want to lose those. And okay, let's go to the next step. You're going to prep all of these all at once, and then we're going to the next step on this, which is turning right side out. So you're going to lift up your interfacing like this to make sure you do not puncture your fabric, cut your fabric at all. And you're gonna just kind of make a little X right here. And I'm gonna cut that just slightly wider. I'm gonna turn right side out. Just kind of punch those little curves out with your thumb as you're turning right side out, like that. Like this, and then you can grab a turning tool. Grab your turning tool. And this is a good one because it's got this little corner, little half circle there, and it's the fabric is very stretchable, but you don't want to force it too hard or else you'll create holes. So just be really gentle when you're using this tool. And I go under your seam. So you've got the two seams. I go closer to the fabric and I make sure the seams are to the inside of this tool, and I gently work those corners. Do you see that? But again, not pushing too hard because this corner, or you can flip it over, this is pointy and you can pop a hole through there. So just kind of working all those angles, those little curved edges. And this kind of smooths out if you've got any jaggedy edges. This is a great way to kind of smooth out those edges. And again, it's not going to be perfect, and that's not what we want, because we can also make allowances when we are stitching this down, when we're appliquing. So I'm going to take it over to my pressing station. Give it a nice press. There's still this angle I want to work, and it's kind of nice because you've just pressed it, so it softened up your fabric, so you can work that angle even more. Again, this is not going to be a speedy quilt. We're just going to take our time, enjoy the journey, and there we go. Okay, let's do the circle. Make sure you do not cut through your fabric. So I'm going to really pop that up. And then I'm going to create a little X. Okay, let's turn that right side out. And circles are never perfect. If you sew a perfect circle, congratulations, because I never do that. So Lori says, you work a pizza, like work a little pizza. First I use my finger, then I use my tool, then just work it around. And you want to create the best circle you can at this point, but if it's not perfect, again, we can make it even better when we applique. Okay, look at that. Again, I'm going to give this a little press. Give it a look. I think I'm going to work that just a little bit longer. Those threads are nice and warm. Again, it's trying to get the best circle we can. And that's ready to go. Okay, very similar to what we've already described. We're going to flip this inside out, but this angle is going to be slightly different. So make sure you don't cut through your fabrics. I'm going to go just up slightly like that, and up slightly like that. So you're going to kind of make a V, a little wonky V. I am going to clip off my ends here. Not quite down to the threads, but you want to clip off your points there, okay? Okay. I'm going to use this. I'm liking how that's turned out. Okay, that looks good. All right, let's take a look at this one. And then I forgot to clip off the tips of those. Okay. Okay, let's take a look. All right, now, again, I'm going just a little bit on the fabric side, and then I flip my point and go on the interfacing side. So you can switch back and forth of that seam. A little bit on the fabric side, a little bit on the interfacing side. Going around like this. Here we go. Okay, let me give it a quick press. Bring it back here, see if there's any fine tuning to do, and it looks pretty good. So we're gonna put these over here with our rest of our supplies. I think that's underneath, yep. And the next step we need to do is make our stems, and we need our green fabric for that. I love this fabric because this is the Jane Austen family crest, which shows a little stag. So that's a lot of fun. That's gonna be our stems. So you need your bias tape maker, and it tells you in the pattern, step 2, using the bias tape method, make 8 curved bias and 4 straight. So the straight, you're gonna get your fabric, this is 5/8 of a yard, cut down selvage to selvage, that's for your straight pieces. But for your curved pieces, you're gonna need to cut your fabrics on the bias. So you need to cut them at a 45-degree angle. Just gonna cut, and 5/8 of an inch. Now you want this to be very accurate, so pay attention. Let's see, pull that back. So pay attention to make sure that's a 45-degree angle, and make sure you cut an accurate 5/8. All right, there. Check twice, cut once, right? All right, let me grab my rotary cutter. I've already cut out my straight pieces. And it has you cut out all your pieces for all your stems for all the blocks at once. I'm just showing you on camera the ones for this block. Oops, I didn't quite cut through that. So, okay. So you'll have all your pieces ready for the bias, and you know bias has the stretch that gives you your curves. And I'm going to grab my straight. You can always tell the straight does not have as much stretch. Definitely more stretch on the bias. Okay, let me take it over to my pressing station. And I grab a couple glass head pins because you can iron on glass head pins. So we have this Riley Aqua. And this is one on the bias. You want to make a deep V to feed through your bias tape maker. Okay, let's give this a press. Some people, I think Lori presses from this way. I'm going to press on the top. It keeps the bias folded under, but whatever way you like to press your bias tape, whatever works for you. We're going to slowly bring that out. We're just going to go nice and slow. There we go. Put that over there. Okay, take a look. We want it even and uniform. Take a look on this side. Looks pretty good. Okay. Again, you'd have this all prepped if you want to do it all at once. You can do that. If you want to do a little at a time, you could do that as well. The pattern says for on the curved bias, we need 8 4-inch bias. So we will cut this 4 inches. You can use a rotary cutter. That one's a little rough, so we'll grab one that we've already prepped. That is, and you can tell which is on the bias and which is not. That's definitely more stretch. Clip off the end. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Need 4 more. Okay, we've got 8 of those, and then we just need 4 of the straight. So we're going to clip off the end. And those are 5 inches, 5 inches. So make sure you read your pattern, and the straights are 5 inches. And 5. Okay, we're ready to go to the next step, which is laying out all of our parts for our applique. Let me clean this up and I'll meet you back here. Okay, we've got this, our base fabric. Now we're ready to assemble our block. So we work on the center, working out on all 4 sides. And so look at the pattern layout. It shows you how to lay everything out. This is bigger. This is 20 by 20, and we are going to trim down after you have appliqued to 18.5 by 18.5. Now, this is a lot of applique, so your block tends to pull in when you have a lot of hand stitching. That's why we give you a larger block to trim down. So you want everything centered from the center of your block. Now, we're going to find the center of this flower. Pay attention how the flower is laid out. It is laid out with the curves on these center marks. So that's centered there. And then this next piece echoes that curve. You can center that. Center that right there. Oh, shifted, I didn't quite. And make sure that's centered. You can take your handy ruler and just make sure it's equal on both sides. And then this is centered as well. And again, this kind of echoes the curve. And you can center that as well. there's a little button circle in the center of that. And then I'm just going to do an applique pin to tack that down for now. Now let's take a look what's next. We've got these units right here, and you can kind of see that curve comes up here, and you can choose to place it however you'd like. If you want it a little farther out, just make sure it's, I do about 3/4 of an inch, or you could do an inch, whatever you choose to do, just make sure it's even on all 4 sides. Making sure that center tip is right on that folded line. We are going to measure those now. Okay, just going to put a little pin down. These are the teeniest little pins. They're so little. Okay, let's make sure now that, and you can pull it up. Again, we're just tacking this down. Okay, that looks good. Put that there. All right, the next thing we're going to do is lay these out. Now this kind of just touches the top of that curve, and that's centered on that creased line that goes into the corner. Oops. We're going to grab those, and we're not measuring, we're just laying out right now. Let's just put these on all 4 corners. Okay, I have one extra from my example earlier. And then you've got this cute little tulip. Let's see how that goes. Goes on like that, to see how far that's sticking out. So it kind of, about there. And what you want is, let's take a look. That looks like there's like a 1/4 inch. So we're gonna want that the same on the layout on all those different sides. We just want things to look uniform and just symmetrical. So lay that out, lay that out, 2 more. Lay that out and lay that out. And I have one extra when I made that earlier. Okay, take a look at that. So this is when we really are going to use our ruler. And I think I want 1/4 inch. And just check out the angle. Kind of curves out. We'll pin those down. And then this is centered on that fold, and it centers all the way up here. I'm just, yep, that cleavage is that center there, okay. I'm gonna pin that down. Okay. Pin that down. Okay, now this is the point, we're at the stage where we're gonna add our stems. And you've got 2 of these curved stems that are cut on the bias that can make a curve, and then we have 1 straight. And you work on the 2 curved pieces first, And those are going to be the stems that go under these side pieces. So I'm just going to kind of lay them out there, put them underneath there. I'm actually going to flip that up. And you want them centered on the tulip there, so you can pin it there. And then you can just, let's see, I'm going to pin it because you want it centered on that line, and then we'll just kind of angle it like that. You see how it creates that curve. Pin that there. I'm going to bring that to the center. You can use the same pin. You can just see how that's angled. Again, you want it centered underneath that tulip. We can make a few adjustments, and then the last one goes right in that cleavage here underneath there. You've got plenty of stem, and it overlaps the other two. You can give it and you can pin it up here and just give that a check. So you don't want the stems going into this part of the flower. You want them fully underneath. And that is looking good. Okay. You're going to repeat that on all three sides, and then you're going to step back, take a look, and say, is it all even? You're going to take your ruler one last time, measuring every single space, make sure it's symmetrical. You're going to check here, 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 here. All those spaces to make sure it's even, and it should eventually come out. This just takes a little time. Again, we're just starting with one block. You have this one block to do all month long, so take your time, lay everything out. Don't get frustrated if it's not all even the first time around, because it rarely is. That's why you pin down with these applique pins until it's just perfect. Now, the next step is to take your applique glue, and you're going to use applique glue like little pins. You don't want a lot of glue, and you don't want it on the edge where you're going to applique, because then it's going to be really hard to machine applique, or it's going to be very hard to hand stitch. So you use it like pins. So say this is ready to go. I do it far away from the edge. That's why Joe Finley's glue, you can do the tiniest of little dots of glue, and it is just like a pin. Now, I usually glue everything down and put 18.5-inch ruler. I know Lori Holt, since this is her pattern, sometimes we'll put a rock or something heavy on that to press it down and give a good press. And then the next day, the glue is dried and you're ready to start appliquing. One step that I do that's, you can choose to do this or not, since there's a lot of layers here, I choose to take this little piece before I tack it down. I'm going to hand applique this and do a layer at a time. So I'm going to applique glue down that piece, but I'm going to hand applique this. Once I'm finished with that, I'm going to hand applique it onto this, and then I'm going to applique glue this on and stitch it. That's a lot of layers, and I'm choosing to do a little piece at a time. I'm also going to hand applique these first before I applique glue those on. So you can choose to put it all on at once and then just hand applique, but I like to have less bulk if at all possible, and this is a big piece to applique, so I'm going to break it down in those little steps. So let's talk about applique. If you're going to machine applique, you can use a tiny little zigzag stitch. I know a lot of people, when they machine applique, use that invisible nylon thread. I have used that before. It's worked okay, but I choose to hand applique. But if you use that method, that's great. You can also use matching thread, so you would change out your thread, and I recommend going slightly darker than your fabrics, and then do the tiniest of tiny stitch length, zigzagging back and forth. Today I'm going to show you how I hand applique, and I'm going to do, we'll do this little piece right here. Now I've already threaded my needle. I'm going to grab my glasses on again. And like I mentioned in Set to Sew, you can use, just use a high quality thread, and you're going to need to use different colors. You can cheat and really use a lot of the same colors, but for this purpose, I will tell you, you need yellow, you need a pink, you'll need a red, a lighter brown, a sagey green, and a darker green. And those are the basic colors you're gonna need to hand applique throughout this process. Okay, for this one, you can choose to applique glue this on. And I'm going to center this. So pretend I've already used my applique glue. Actually, I'll just show you. It's not going to dry super quick, but again, I would applique this like this. Those are big drops. Usually I do much smaller drops. I just squeeze too hard. And that is, you can check one more time to make sure that's centered. Yeah, that's centered. You can fold it several different times to make sure that's centered. Okay, Sue Daly taught me how to knot your thread. You put your end, go end toward the needle, wrap it around a couple times, pull it to the end. That's how I knot my thread. And then I'm going to start from the bottom up. And I actually, when I'm appliquing, I go slightly under my applique into the interfacing. You go right next to where you brought your threads up. And then you advance it slightly forward. The key to hand applique is to try and hide your stitches and kind of pull them underneath. And if you've ever done needle turn applique, I do a little bit of needle turn if I don't have super smooth edges. So you can hardly see this, but there's a little pokey edge right here, just ever so slightly. So I'll take the tip of my needle, stick it underneath where that interfacing in is, and I pull it under there, securing it with my thumb right there to keep it in place. And then I go stitch up, down and stitch up until I've gone past that spot where there was that slight edge that poked up. Now you said, oh look, there's a white portion of that fabric. I'm going to go even more underneath into the interfacing so you don't see my stitches. So again, it's not slightly, this is where you can cheat, and when your curves aren't perfectly round, this is where you pull it in and just refine that look of that circle. Just going to go completely around. So I'm going to pull that in, go underneath that, secure it with my thumb, and I'm just sewing around here. I am using that 60 weight thread. Like I mentioned before, I sewed that quilt behind me on 50 weight thread. Worked great, but I really love this Afina Wonderfill thread. It really is wonderful. So good. And I just take my time appliquing around this circle. And I really love handwork. My eyes don't work like they used to, so I definitely have to have readers. But I love a project that I can take that's so portable, and I look for ways to, I heard this term, work in the margins of the day, or steal different moments of time. When my kids were in school, if I went to an event and I was waiting around for something, I always had applique in my pocket. And it's amazing how much you can get done when you have little moments of downtime and the margins of the day, the mornings and the evenings of the day. And sometimes I even applique at work, but I don't have a lot of time at Riley Blake to applique at work. But sometimes, every once in a while, I'll pull it out. Okay, I'm just working around that circle. Again, any kind of little pop-outs that weren't perfectly round, I pull in. And if you prefer to have it tacked down and sew in the corner, that's great too. I just like that I can sew on this circle. Jill Finley also makes glue dots. If you've been appliquing a lot, you like tack them on your finger, and because if you're appliquing a lot, then your fingers can get a little raw if you're poking them. Okay, we're coming around the bend. We're wrapping up. I just kind of go a couple stitches over from where I started, and I go, when I finish off, I tuck it underneath the applique, and then I just make a knot on the back. Sometimes I do two knots. Here we go. Clip my thread. All right, this is all trimmed up, and look how good that looks. So you can repeat that on all these other flowers. You can even choose to do it on this little tulip piece, hand applique that before you glue applique it onto the bigger pieces. Because it's so much easier and portable to work on these smaller pieces. And then you're ready to do the whole entire block. That is going to be my homework. I'm going to finish laying this out, tacking it down with my applique glue, and then I'm going to hand applique the rest of the block. That's my homework, and I promise you I'm going to be ready for you next month. I'm going to show you my finished block. And I hope you're going to sew along with me and finish your block next month too. And then I'll show you the next block. So the next block actually is going to be a piece of cake after working on this block. This is the next block. Look at these little tulips. This is going to be so easy. Next block. We're starting with a hard one. Then we go easy. Then we have a few more challenging blocks. So you're going to do this 4 different times. And I'm going to show you how to walk you through this block. So I am so glad you're here today sewing along with me. Again, I'm going to take you through step by step. If you have any questions or concerns, leave them in the comment section. We do read them all, and we'll try and answer your questions. So thanks everyone for sewing along with me on the 250th anniversary quilt. We will see you next month with my finished block. I hope to see your finished block, and see you next time. Hey everyone, I've finished my homework and my Chawton block is done. I have a few more tips to share while they're fresh on my mind that I think will be helpful to you. So first of all, I did assemble my block units at a time. I sewed this piece onto this piece onto this piece, and then I sewed around these yellow pieces. That worked very well to do this section first. Then I started working on these corners. Now I still had this off. I did separately applique this little circle onto this flower. And just a reminder of the tip that you want your glue more in the center, not to the edges. And I'm going to even show you for these stems, you want the smallest, the teeniest of glue. I'm going to show you how little. That's how little a drop of glue that you want on the stems. So you don't have glue on the edges when you're appliquing, because it's a little hard. You can get your needle through the glue, but it's easier if there's not glue on the edges. So that's a little tip for that. Now, as you're working, sometimes I worked at a table, sometimes I was on my couch, sometimes I was even in the car. But if you're working on a table, it's really nice to pull your quilt block like this. That's why these design boards are so helpful. And I would take my applique and applique like this on the design board as support. Now, if you're in your car and you are on the move, sometimes I would take my applique like this, and I would applique with it rolled up like that. So to get back to my corners, I appliqued my stems first before I put on my flower, and making sure that this angle follows along that creased corner fold right there. And so you've got that little indent right there, and you got that little arch there. That's in the center of the corner. And so I would applique on my stems first, then I appliqued my flower, then I appliqued my leaves, starting in the center here to make sure that was in the center of the stem. I appliqued around there, and then I went to these little tulips on the side. Now, if you want to do a one thread and not have a break in your thread, you can start on the side here, and you're going to applique around like this, around here, and then you're going to pivot and go around there with one thread. That's how you do those tulips. Again, when you're working on those corners, you can roll this up like this, and you can just applique this on. The base fabric is a natural fiber. It's going to fray a little bit, shouldn't fray too much, but you don't want to trim up your block till you're ready to assemble your quilt. So if you're anxious to trim up your block, I'm going to talk about pressing. I'm going to give you a pressing tip, but I'm not going to trim up my block today. So once everything's appliqued, you're going to lay it down and give it a look. And again, don't make yourself crazy trying to have all exact measurements, because that's almost impossible to do. If you look at it, it looks pleasing to the eye, that's good enough. You can bring out your cute cut ruler and just make sure you can check it, see if everything is looking good. If it's lined up, if something is really off balance, you can always re-applique it. Whatever your comfort level is. How perfect do you want your quilt to be? And this is really helpful. It's a large 18.5-inch trim-it ruler, and you just center it in the very center of that little circle there, and then you line up the corners. You have previously marked them. And your fabrics could have shifted a little bit. They're definitely pulling in, because that's a lot of applique, so you can see how much I need to trim around. And I actually adjusted this slightly. What I really want to see when I'm looking at this is that all my stems are lined up. Do you see that? They're all lined up, and I would trim it up after I press it. I would not trim this until I had pressed it. So let me just give you a quick pressing tip. Like we mentioned in the Set to Sew video, this is a press-it pad that Jill Finley developed with Riley Blake Design. And it's made out of super soft terry cloth, and it's meant for applique pieces. Jill Finley appliques all the time. And you can see that it's really wrinkly. After you're done, you've worked this fabric a lot, and so it needs a good press, and especially before you square it up. So you never want to press directly onto your applique. What you want to do is flip it over. Now this press-it pad, this is a large applique block, so it's not going to take up the whole pad. You're just going to do a section at a time, and you flip it over, and this thick terry cloth allows those applique pieces to just not get flattened, because it's like a soft surface for them to push into. And again, I would applique all my blocks, but I know some of you like to press as you go. I would applique all my blocks and press them all at once. I would not trim up my quilt blocks until they are ready to be put into a quilt. But look how beautiful. I think I could press this a little bit longer and even get better results right in here. But yeah, my block is finished. So I hope you enjoyed a few more tips. I know this is a super long video, but this is important to get you successfully sewing this 250th anniversary quilt. Leave comments in the comment section what's been helpful to you, or you can share your own tips. We're all here sharing each other's knowledge, and I hope what I've shared with you today is helpful in creating the Chawton Block.